Hereditary isn't just a horror movie, it's a deeply disturbing experience that leaves emotional scars. Ari Aster's directorial debut plays out like a slow-motion car crash. You can't look away, even though every fiber of your being is telling you to. The film begins with the death of the Graham family matriarch, but that's just the start of their problems. As Annie and her family struggle with grief, strange things begin happening. Let's just say that no one in this family has a clean bill of mental health, and the way the story explores inherited trauma makes the horror feel personal. What really sets Hereditary apart is its refusal to rely on typical scare tactics. Sure, there are shocking moments, you know, the one with the telephone pole, but the real terror is how the film slowly chips away at your sanity. From the unsettling miniatures Annie creates to the skin-crawling séance scene, this film is like watching a nightmare unfold in excruciating detail. By the time you get to the finale, an absolutely bonkers sequence of events involving decapitation, levitation, and one of the most terrifying smiles ever captured on film, you'll be rethinking every decision that led you to hit play. Oh, and good luck walking through your house in the dark afterward without imagining someone crouched in the corner. James Wan's The Conjuring is basically the horror film equivalent of a haunted house amusement ride, except instead of getting off at the end, you're left in your own quiet home, desperately trying to forget what you just saw. Set in the 1970s, it follows real-life paranormal investigators Ed and Lorraine Warren as they help the Perron family deal with the malevolent forces haunting their farmhouse. This isn't your typical creaky floorboards and flickering lights haunted house flick. This is an all-out assault on your senses. The scares are relentless, from ghostly claps in the dark to full-on possessions that make you wonder why anyone ever thought living in the middle of nowhere was a good idea. The film does an excellent job of building tension, and Wan's camera work is so precise that even the subtlest movements become terrifying. The backstory of the witch Bathsheba, who allegedly cursed the land the house is built on, adds another layer of creepiness to the whole affair. And let's not forget the exorcism scene. It's the kind of visual chaos that makes you realize just how much you're clutching your couch cushions. But what really makes this movie unforgettable is its aftermath. Every creak of your own house, every unexpected noise in the night, suddenly feels like the start of your very own haunting. By the end, you'll be ready to burn some sage, sprinkle salt in the corners, and maybe even call a priest just to be safe. If you thought Final Destination had you paranoid about random objects, wait until you see It Follows. This movie takes the concept of an inescapable curse and turns it into one of the most anxiety-inducing films of the last decade. The premise is deceptively simple. After a sexual encounter, Jay, played by Micah Monroe, finds herself the target of a supernatural entity that will follow her at a walking pace. It sounds manageable, right? Nope. The genius of It Follows is that the creature can look like anyone, which means every stranger, every random passerby, becomes a potential threat. The movie expertly plays with your expectations. Just when you think you're safe, a figure in the background starts to walk, and suddenly your heart is in your throat. What's worse, it never runs. It just keeps coming, slow and steady, like death itself. Director David Robert Mitchell uses wide-angle shots to show Jay's world as this expansive open space where the danger could be lurking anywhere, which means your eyes are constantly scanning the screen for anything suspicious. It's a slow burn, but once it gets under your skin, it stays there. You'll be left side-eyeing every random person walking toward you on the street for weeks, if not longer. They call it the scariest movie of all time for a reason, and if you haven't seen The Exorcist, you owe it to yourself, and your nightmares, to check it out. This is the granddaddy of demonic possession films, and nearly half a century after its release, it's still just as bone-chilling. Based on William Peter Blatty's novel, the film follows 12-year-old Reagan, Linda Blair, as she's possessed by an ancient demon. What starts as some weird noises in the attic and a little girl behaving strangely, soon escalates into a full-on battle between good and evil. The things this movie does to Reagan's body, spinning her head 360 degrees, levitating, spewing green vomit, are just as shocking now as they were back in 1973. And let's talk about the demon's voice, a raspy, guttural sound that could probably make your hair turn white if you listen to it for too long. The film's use of religious iconography, combined with its groundbreaking special effects, gives it a sense of realism that's genuinely disturbing. But the real kicker is the slow, relentless build-up. By the time Father Marin, Max von Sydow, arrives to perform the titular exorcism, the tension is nearly unbearable. Even if you're not religious, The Exorcist will have you questioning the existence of evil forces, and possibly booking a one-way ticket to the nearest convent. If you've ever been sleep-deprived and stressed out, The Babadook is going to hit differently. This Australian horror movie follows Amelia, a widow struggling to raise her troubled son, Samuel, after her husband's tragic death. Samuel finds a mysterious book called Mr. Babadook, which introduces a monstrous, top-hatted figure into their already chaotic lives. What starts as an innocent bedtime story quickly escalates into a psychological horror that explores grief, mental illness, and the overwhelming nature of parenthood. But don't worry, this movie isn't all metaphors. The Babadook himself is genuinely terrifying, with his tall, shadowy figure and guttural voice that echoes through the house. The sound design in this movie is impeccable, making every creak and groan in the house feel ominous. Amelia's slow descent into madness, triggered by the Babadook's presence, makes you question what's real and what's all in her head. By the time the film reaches its chilling climax, where the Babadook fully manifests, you'll be clutching your blanket like it's a life preserver. And the ending? Let's just say it's not exactly the resolution you'd expect, leaving you with that lingering feeling that maybe, just maybe, the Babadook isn't entirely gone. There's something inherently creepy about old home movies, but Sinister cranks that up to 11. In this film, Ethan Hawke plays Ellison, a true crime writer who moves his family into a house where the previous occupants were all murdered, because that always works out well. In the attic, Ellison discovers a box of old 8mm films, which, upon closer inspection, turn out to be recordings of various families being brutally murdered. All of these families seem to be connected by a demonic entity named Boogle, who's as unsettling as his name is hard to pronounce. As Ellison watches these snuff films, the movie builds an almost unbearable tension. The grainy, amateurish quality of the footage makes it feel far too real, and the slow realization that Boogle isn't just hanging out in the background, but might actually be able to come through the films, turns the whole concept of watching horror movies on its head. Add in some eerie supernatural elements, creepy kids, and a handful of jump scares that will have you leaping out of your seat, and Sinister becomes one of those movies that sticks with you long after the credits roll. You'll be giving your attic the side eye for a good period after this one. Even if you're not afraid of small spaces, The Descent will make you feel like the walls are closing in. The story follows a group of 6 women who go on a caving expedition in the Appalachian Mountains. Sounds like fun, right? Except they don't tell anyone where they're going, and as it turns out, they've wandered into an unexplored cave system. The early parts of the film are enough to make you squirm with claustrophobia as the characters crawl through tight tunnels and get stuck in horrifying ways. But then the real horror kicks in. The cave is home to a species of blind, flesh-eating humanoid creatures that hunt by sound. These creatures are fast, vicious, and utterly terrifying, turning what was already a survival thriller into a blood-soaked nightmare. The darkness in the cave is so complete that every flicker of a flashlight feels like a lifeline, and the confined spaces make every encounter with the creatures even more intense. The film doesn't pull any punches with its violence either. Characters get ripped apart in gruesome, visceral ways that leave you wondering if anyone's going to make it out alive. By the time it's over, you'll be seriously reconsidering any plans you had for spelunking or even visiting that dark basement you've been avoiding. Paranormal Activity proves that sometimes, less is more when it comes to horror. Shot on a shoestring budget, the film relies on subtle scares and the power of suggestion to make your skin crawl. The movie is presented as found footage of a couple, Katie and Micah, who set up a camera in their bedroom to document the strange things happening in their house. At first, it's just small things, doors closing on their own, strange noises in the middle of the night. But as the nights progress, the entity haunting them becomes more and more aggressive, and the tension ramps up to an almost unbearable degree. One of the scariest things about this movie is how little you actually see. The camera is often focused on an empty hallway or a still room, with only subtle changes, like a door moving or a shadow passing by, to tip you off that something is wrong. It taps into that primal fear of the unknown, making you hyper-aware of every sound in your own home. And the final moments. Let's just say you'll be replaying them in your head every time you hear a floorboard creak in the middle of the night. Insidious takes you to a place most horror movies don't dare venture, the astral plane. When the Lambert family's young son, Dalton, falls into an inexplicable coma, strange things begin happening around their home. It turns out that Dalton has the ability to astral project. Basically, his spirit can leave his body and travel to other dimensions. But now he's trapped in a dark, terrifying realm called the Further, and something sinister is trying to take his body. The film is filled with unnerving imagery, from ghostly figures creeping through the house to a demon with a face that looks like Darth Maul's evil twin. But what really makes Insidious stand out is its use of sound. The shrill violins and jarring discordant notes will make your heart race long before anything scary even happens. Director James Wan, yes, him again, knows exactly how to keep you on edge, and the film's pacing is relentless. Just when you think you've caught your breath, another terrifying figure steps out of the shadows. The Witch is what happens when historical drama and supernatural horror collide in the creepiest way possible. Set in the 1630s, the film follows a deeply religious family that is exiled from their Puritan settlement and forced to live on the edge of a dark, foreboding forest. Soon, strange and terrifying things begin to happen. Crops fail, the youngest child disappears, and a sinister presence seems to be lurking in the woods. The film is steeped in atmosphere, with its period-accurate dialogue and stark, unsettling cinematography. The tension builds slowly, with every whispered accusation and sideways glance adding to the sense of doom. And then there's Black Phillip, the family's goat, who is far more than just a farm animal. The final revelation, that the witch in the woods is real, and that Black Phillip might be the devil himself, is delivered with such eerie calm that it's impossible to shake off. By the time the credits roll, you'll be left with a deep sense of unease, wondering if you, too, might be tempted to live deliciously. If you liked this video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up, hit that subscribe button, and let me know your thoughts in the comments below. See you in the next one.